So, for today's video, I want to talk about this quote from the 1951 Alice in Wonderland.
Start at the beginning.
Yeah. And when you come to the end, stop.
Now, this is one of those quotes that sounds either completely nonsensical or so obvious that you don't fully understand why it was said. I mean, of course, when you tell a story, you start at the beginning and then you stop when you get to the end. But there are some people who don't seem to understand this. Now, there are plenty of examples out there. I'm going to specifically talk about one. And the person that I'm going to be talking about is actually Piers Anthony. Piers Anthony is a writer who's been writing for quite some time. I don't know exactly how long, and I don't really have the means of finding out at the moment, but he's been writing for a while. And one of his more popular series is the Xanth series. Now, his Xanth series takes place in a magical world called Xanth, and it's a world populated with puns and people with magic and people without magic and all that kind of stuff, and it's more complex than that, but in general, that's what his series is about. And his original plan was to write 3 books: Spell for Chameleon, The Source of Magic, and Castle Rudna. But he ended up expanding that by quite a bit. And I honestly don't mind that he went beyond 3 books, because he wrote a lot of good Xanth books after those first 3. But there soon reached a point where these books stopped being good. He continued to write them, I think, 1, because people kept sending in puns for him to use, and he didn't want to not use them. And 2, because they're easy to write, so he knocks one out every year, gets money for it, and he's done. And it becomes a problem because not only are the stories very laden with puns, but the stories themselves become very formulaic. So he's basically written the same story several times, but with different characters. And this is the problem with writers who don't stop when they get to the end of their story. The stories repeat themselves, it just gets boring, and nothing new comes out of it. Now, there are several people who obviously do follow this rule, but the one that I'm going to talk about, just because she's gotten the most backlash from following this rule, is J.K. Rowling. She said from the very beginning that Harry Potter was going to be 7 books, and she started with the first one, went to the 7th one, and stopped. So, when she got to the end, she stopped, despite the fact that basically everybody else in the world didn't want her to. There are so many people who don't like the fact that J.K. Rowling stopped writing the Harry Potter series, despite the fact that she said from the beginning that it was going to be 7 books. And so my feeling is that so many people didn't like the epilogue simply because it was J.K. Rowling saying, there's no more books that are going to be coming out in this particular series. Now, obviously, I can't speak for everybody's opinion on the epilogue, whether they like it or not, so I can't say that that's why people don't like it. But I really can't help but think that that's why people don't like it. And yet, J.K. Rowling is following this rule set down by the March Hare and the Mad Hatter that everybody tends to laugh at because of how obvious it is. So, it's an obvious rule, and yet people don't want authors to follow it if the series is popular enough. Obviously, J.K. Rowling has given her fans a lot more in the Harry Potter universe, but keep in mind, it's not that she's writing more, it's that she's expanding on the universe that she already knew about. And I have a lot of respect for J.K. Rowling for stopping at the 7th book, despite the fact that all of her fans, well, almost all of them, said that she should continue. Because she did follow the rule, and quite frankly, I think that all writers should follow that rule. It's just a shame that not a lot of them do. So to all you writers out there, I have one piece of advice. When you write a story, start at the beginning. And when you get to the end,
Stop.
And yet, J.K. Rowling is following the rules set down by the March Hare and the Mad Hatter that a lot of these people likely laughed at if they were to